I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, I've told you guys not a month goes by when I don't at least get one, maybe two, either emails or phone calls from a media outlet. Either some of them come from the US, but most of them from Canada, asking for my opinion if I could be interviewed for a real estate topic. And I've told you guys for the last 7 or 8 years, I have turned down probably 98% of them. Every month I'll get one. And I pretty much turn down all of them. A, I just don't have the time. B, the big reason I find is it's usually wanting my comment on something negative. And for the last 6-7 months here, it's been nothing but that. Talk about the condo crash, the slowing market, prices going down, pre-sale market in a slump, and all that other stuff that I've been talking about here on my blog here for several years. And so it's always something negative. And what I found, I learned my lessons years and years ago. Even when I do give them I'll give them my opinion, but I always try and turn it to say, well, yes, markets go up and down. You get good years, bad years. I've been in this for 35 years, so I've seen a lot of great hot markets where prices are going up, and I've seen some down markets, and then I've seen some markets where things are treading water. It's all par for the course. It's all transient. It comes and goes. There's always another worry around the corner. But what I found is that they would never use that. They would just use the negative stuff in my interview that I gave, and not the positive spin that I tried to put it on at the end, which I like to do. But this one came across my desk. This young woman, she was a former reporter for BNN. I recognized her name. She used to be on BNN Network. She's now works she's a freelance writer for Canadian Press. She's a business and economics reporter, writes for the Financial Post, Globe and Mail. I think has a business degree and an economics degree. So she's got quite good credentials. And she came across one of my YouTube videos when I was talking about that guy that wrote that book called The Wealthy Renter. This goes back probably 8 years ago. And she saw that I kind of did a rebuttal to that guy's book on The Wealthy Renter. You guys can go into my archives and have a look at it. But she emailed me and said, renting for life, is it really a bad idea, especially with the way prices now have been coming down a bit and all the stuff going on with pre-sales and the economy, and interest rates had been going up. Now they're kind of coming back down, of course. She wanted to know if she could interview me, because she was going to interview the guy who wrote The Wealthy Renter and try and get, conflicting opinions on it. So I thought about it overnight, and then I told my wife, you know what, this lady's got some pretty good credentials, and this is something that I feel very strong about. Owning your principal residence and not becoming a renter for life. And you guys go back and look at the video I did on this, on the book that this guy wrote called The Wealthy Renter. So I got back to her the next morning and I said, sure, you know what, call me. We set up a time for a half-hour interview later that week. So I've done the interview. As I speak, this is going to be published, by the time this video goes live, it was going to be published late August or early September. So you guys should be able to Google this, probably something about renting, lifetime renter or the wealthy renter, or is renting really the way to go. You can even plug my name in and it should bring up this article by the time this airs. And how the article is going to go, I don't know. I think it went pretty well. I got my points across with her. Funny thing is, she's a homeowner herself. She's smart. She's only rented a little bit when she went to school, but her and her husband have both owned, and they've owned several homes. So they're very happy with the purchase. She lives in Vancouver here. So I'll just go through it just quickly, some of the stuff I mentioned to her. So she asked me, in these current times, does this rent to own or rent and not buy hold up? And I said no, and it's never held up. There is no such thing as a wealthy renter. Just like when I did that blog 8 years ago when this guy's book came out. So the premise of this guy's book, guys, it's been around for 30 years, over 30 years. I remember my dad used to tell me about these people, that, hey, I rent and I save the difference. Well, 30 years ago, it may have held up a little more, although because interest rates, of course, were, double digits. Interest rates in the mid 80s got up to 13-14%. Rents were cheap. Places to rent were abundant. So for the right guy, the right person, it could have made sense. But you see, most people don't rent and save the difference, as my dad used to tell me. Most people rent and spend the difference. But as the years have gone on, it's become less and less of an option for anybody these days. And I went through with this lady, my reasonings for it, and I break it down in that video blog I did back 7-8 years ago. You guys can go into my archives and watch it. More detail on that video. But I told her that it would take a very special person to be able to do that. And I gave her some hard numbers on a condo that I just sold that I'll run by through you guys. But there is very little difference to save. And first off, saving is not going to get you anywhere. I've done lots of Saturday blogs on saving. Saving, putting your money in a checking account or a term deposit or a GIC at 3%, it's coming down. And another few more years will be lucky to earn 2% on a GIC. They're not tax efficient. You're not even keeping pace with inflation on an interest-bearing vehicle these days. So you've got to invest your money, get it in the stock market, and that opens up a whole other can of worms. You guys know on my book I talk about it. Most people don't have the first clue about investing in the stock market. It shouldn't be that way because you can just index invest and call it a day. But most just do not have the patience or the capacity to spend 100 hours learning the basics. And it's a shame. That's why I wrote my book. But, I went through, I said, owning should be, and it always has been, the absolute first priority for everybody. The biggest thing is that principal residence exemption. And I know, yes, down the road here, the Liberals are going to want a piece of that principal residence exemption. It's going to happen. But for right now, it's not. And even when it does, it's going to be a very small amount. 1 or 2%, you're going to keep the other 98%. So the principal residence exemption is the only true tax shelter we get in Canada. Anyone that's not taking advantage of it is out of their mind. I'm sorry. I know for some of you guys watching, if you're saving for your down payment to buy your first place, no problem. You're saving, you're going to get into home ownership. But if you've been renting for a long period of time and you're not taking advantage of the principal residence exemption, boy, yikes, you guys got to do this. It's the only true tax shelter we get. It has minted more millionaires and multimillionaires in this country than all other sources combined. I became a millionaire the first time around because of it. So how it works, you buy a $600,000 condo today, a 1-bed on SkyTrain in Richmond. You keep it for 25 years. You sell it for 1.2. That $600,000 capital gain goes to you completely 100% tax-free. So to net $600,000 tax-free on a principal residence, you would have to have 1.213 in your RSP all day to net that same amount because it's taxable when you start pulling it out. So you want to take advantage of that. The other thing I told her, even take money out of the equation. Owning your principal residence is a safety blanket, is what it is. The safety blanket, what I mean is you own the home. You're not worried about getting that phone call from your landlord that I'm going to sell the home and you're going to be out in 3 months, or my son is going to move into it, or I'm going to move into it, or my daughter, and we're giving you 3 months notice. You're not at the whim of rent increases every year, or when you do move out after a few years and try and find another place, you're going to get a huge spike in rent then, for sure. It's a safety blanket. It gives you that peace of mind, that ownership. It's pride of ownership. You can customize the home. You can paint the wall colors whatever you want. You can build an office. You can build a little gym in your home. Whatever you want to do that you cannot do if you're renting. So for that reason alone, I tell people just the stability that it gives you is enough. But as far as financial, with the principal residence exemption, it's not even close. But there's always been very little difference to save versus investing. So I gave her a condo that I just sold, a wood frame condo in Richmond a week prior. I gave her the exact numbers here. I sold this condo. It's a 42-year-old wood frame condo. I know the building well because I own a unit in here. I've owned a unit in this strata for about 20 years now. Good older strata, right near SkyTrain in Richmond on Lansdowne Road. Sold the unit for $399. On the market for about 40 days. So I'll give you the breakdown here. 10% down, that would be $40,000 at a 3.9% variable rate equals just under $1,900 a month for your mortgage payment. Now keep in mind, that mortgage payment is paying down some principal. So remember, as I always say with homeownership, you're creating equity 2 ways every year. You don't need you don't necessarily need the market to go up, but it will over time. But every year, regardless of what the market does, you're creating equity because you're paying down some of that principal every year. And in the early years, you don't notice it much, but after about 10 years, you really start to do some damage to that principal. And then the other way you're creating equity, of course, is over time, that property will appreciate. But not every year. We all know that. There's going to be good years, bad years, years where it treads water. But I can guarantee you inflation or real estate goes up to at least the cost of inflation, never in lockstep. There's always delays there. But if you hold a condo for 20 years, guess what? It's going to be worth more than what you paid for it. It will. Plus you paid off that mortgage. So $40,000 down, $1,880 a month for your mortgage payment, $349 a month is the current maintenance, $1,324 per year for property tax, so it's just over $100 a month for that. All in, it's going to be approximately $2,400 a month to hold that property. But keep in mind, $200 or $300 of that is coming straight off your principal, maybe a little bit more, and that starts to shift as it goes further and further along. So it's $2,400 all in, including, and you might have to set aside another $100 a month or so for repairs or whatever else, but we'll call it $2,400. Those units are currently renting for $2,250 to $2,300. So there you go. So it's $150 savings, although it's not a savings because, again, you're paying down some principal with that $2,400 a month on that mortgage. So where is the difference to save, let alone invest, which most people do not have the capacity for? You know, the stats are pretty astonishing. I mean, most people, half Canadians don't even have a TFSA opened. And of the ones that do, it's less than $5,000 in the TFSA, and it's in fixed income for most people. They don't know what to do with the money and properly even know how to invest it. So there's no savings to be done. And I pointed out to, calculator.net, I pointed out to you guys, go on that website, look up their mortgage calculator. It'll give you a 25-year amortization chart on there. You can plug in the interest rate, 25-year, and it'll give you the breakdown of principal to interest payment. And this is part of your 100 hours that you got to learn this stuff, but it's pretty cool to see it. In the early years, you're chipping off some principal. At 3.9, you're doing some damage right away. When I started off, when I was paying 13% on my mortgages, geez, for every $1,000 I paid on my mortgage, I was chipping off all of $30 off the principal. But at 3.9%, you're chipping off several $100s. But that shifts as time goes on. So you want to learn that stuff. I also pointed out to her that the typical condo downtown, very basic, $2,800 a month now for a one bed, and that's not going to be anything fancy. $2,800 a month, that equals $33,600 a year. If you start from age 25 and rent till you're 65, that is $1.4 million, but I'm not indexing that to rent increases. That's just your rent based off $2,800 for life. If you index that, just add another 2% index for rent increases, 2.5%. You're going to drop a cool $1.8 to $2 million by the time you're 65. Do the math, guys. It's incredible with zero to show for it. And there is virtually zero difference between renting and owning to save or let alone invest, which most people won't have. People don't have the discipline to invest the difference, even though there's very little to invest anyways. It's almost like a forced savings account buying the home, not to mention the principal resident exemption, not to mention the creating equity by paying down the debt every year and the appreciation. So it's a no-brainer. I think I convinced her, and I think she was in agreement, this renting for life is a fool's errand. It really is. Nothing wrong with renting short-term, guys, while you save for the down payment. But you gotta get into home ownership. You should be possessed by it. I bought my first place when I was still 18. I was almost 19 years old when I bought my first place. But then again, I come from a real estate family, and my dad pounded it into me at a really young age. Instead of buying that Camaro that I wanted to buy, forget it. Buy your first home. It's like a safety blanket, and you've crossed a huge financial hurdle. Best advice I ever got. I wanted to buy a Camaro, but I bought a condo, still own it today, paid $68,000 for it in Richmond. But I went through it, I think I explained myself pretty well. The funny thing about that book that the guy read, The Wealthy Renter, the real killer for that, and she knew this as well. On BNN, he did the interview with the book, and at the end of the day, the guy asked him, so you rent, obviously, and he said, no, I own. Well, My God, that tells you everything you need to know about the quality of that book. If the author doesn't follow his own advice, then what is this? The book didn't hold up when he wrote it 8 years ago. It didn't really hold up 20 years ago, and it still doesn't hold up. There is no such thing as a wealthy renter, at least not in a big city like Toronto or Vancouver or any major U.S. city. There's just not a big spread with our current interest rates between owning and renting. And that little bit that is there, maybe, would take a very disciplined person to do. You're not going to come out ahead even with the $200 or $300 if you put it into stock. And just the safety blanket alone of owning rather than being at the whim of your landlord. So have a look at it. By the time this video airs, I'm sure you'd be able to look it up. We'll see what the article kind of paints me as, because I've done a few videos or interviews over the years that things were taken out of context and all that other stuff, and that's why I don't give a lot of these interviews. But I put my money where my mouth is, unlike the guy that wrote that book. When I tell you that you want to own and not be a renter, that's what I've always done, and that's what I still advocate to everybody. Get into home ownership, take advantage of the principal resident exemption, take advantage of that safety blanket, the pride of ownership, creating the equity two ways, paying down the debt, and over time you'll get appreciation on it. It's the way to go. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. See you next week.